A third of the food in our households goes to waste, and half of that could have been eaten. And then if you add onto that the amount of waste that gets lost in the food chain, it's too much. It's far too much.
So none of us would want to waste food. So why do we? Is it economics?
Yes, you could argue that food is too cheap, for example. We're encouraged to overconsume in many ways, to buy more. That's good for the supermarkets, that's good for the suppliers, if we are buying more than we actually need. But of course it's really bad for the planet, and it's really bad when you're thinking about having to feed 9 billion people in the future.
The agricultural system and the food system as a whole, when you add in supermarket trolleys and all of that, generates a large amount of greenhouse gases. But the land on which food is grown can also absorb a large amount of carbon from the atmosphere. Trying to make sure that the agricultural sector is absorbing more than it's emitting is what climate smart or climate friendly agriculture might look like. Essentially, it means producing more food on the same amount of land with fewer inputs. We can't afford to keep on chopping down trees, keep on bringing new land into cultivation. We need to use the clever intelligence that we have to focus our knowledge better on the land that we've got.
We need to look at this as an area which is of primary importance, first of all, to the Treasury. Unless you get through to the Treasury, unless you get through to finance departments, you don't actually resonate with politicians, and therefore you don't get the governance structure right. Now you talked about, is this a matter of economics, when you were talking to Sue? And of course, what are we talking about here? We're talking about economics. We're talking about the allocation of scarce resources. What else is economics but the allocation of scarce resources? And therefore, if you're looking to how you distribute food amongst 9 billion people, and beyond that even, this is the most complex question of administrative justice that the world has ever faced.
We have to be thinking about access to food. That's really what it's about. We need to have a food system, or a series of food systems which allow equitable access, and that we don't have at the moment. Access, physical access, so is the distribution system sufficient? Is the storage system sufficient? We need to have economic access. Is food affordable? It is for the majority of us, comfortably. For many people in the world, it just isn't.
Not for that 2 billion that you were talking about.
Correct. And are the trade arrangements satisfactory? So all of that really puts the spotlight on the governance of the food systems of the world. Where is the power? Who's in charge? And how do we as society address the imbalances that we see manifest today?
Here you have the United Nations problem. And the United Nations problem is a very simple one. It's that each government has to do the best it can for its own citizens. And what that means is you have writ large across the globe a paradox of the commons. If everybody does selfishly the best for their own citizens, then what we don't end up with is the best for the global structure and system as a whole. But if you want to create peace, if you don't want conflict, then the best way to do that is to create justice. And if you want to create justice, the best way to do that is to live sustainably.
What is good for the planet, it's also often what's good for our health as well. But actually understanding that in a way that is usable by consumers, which the food industry can support, which government can do something about through its public procurement processes, through about its food in hospitals and its food in schools. It's enormous potential here. And I don't quite understand the reluctance to engage in this area.
It's only when we get this to be important to all the other disciplines are we then going to be able to get a governance structure that reflects that reality.